Okay, this is part 2 of the series Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Although I'm not interested, I'm absolutely not focused on these subjects. It doesn't amuse me. We still have to make a jump in the past, probably because of the astrological transits. We have 4 of the big bodies going retrograde. Uranus is going forward, yet Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, and Neptune are retrograde, which would mean that in order to build the future correctly, we still have to look deep inside, do a little more transmutation, accomplish more of our transmutation of the system. We're still in Capricorn, and understand the past to better imagine and dream our future. So I propose in this presentation a non-dual point of view about the Illuminati. We are going to expand to groups that are not known as well as the 2 main ones. Okay. The very first thing to keep in mind is that all these illuminated group started right after the Age of Enlightenment. The Age of Enlightenment, le siècle des Lumières, started early 17th century. It triggered a fantastic leap in knowledge, science, and consciousness. Circles of illuminated were blooming in the intellectual elite. And this was a reaction to the growing movement of skepticism and atheism, eventually led by Voltaire and Diderot. So it is also important to note that the term illuminated, illuminé, was already used in the 15th century. We have a group in Spain. They were called Allumbrados or Illuminados. They are recorded as already bothering the church, as one of the things that is known is that when Ignatius of Loyola started to have too much relationship with them or meet with them, then he was in trouble with the church. Okay, so the term has been used much before the 18th century. First one, we will speak about the Illuminati of Sweden. It was created after Swedenborg, not created by Swedenborg. Emanuel Swedenborg was a very versatile and productive thinker. He published on subjects ranging from metallurgy, anatomy, astronomy, to flying objects. He had theories about the neuron that were later recognized as accurate. Swedenborg's father was a Lutheran pastor, so raised as a Christian. He was first known as a scientist. But he was experiencing a lot of intense questioning, and he went through some kind of a dark night of the soul, punctuated by vivid dreams and visions. It is said that it was very difficult and he struggled a lot. And then he emerged out of it in 1745, saying that he went through a spiritual transformation and breakthrough. He started to claim that he was communicating with Jesus, with angels, and other non-being entities. He wrote about the inner meaning of the Bible. So after being focused on science, he started to write about spirituality, the Bible, the nature of love, wisdom of the soul. Long before the New Age, he described beings from other planets. outside of the solar system. He actually believed that the last judgment had already occurred in 1757, and that his responsibility was to be the conduit for the word of Jesus and the conduit of the second coming. And he was supposed to lay out the general principles for the new church and the New Jerusalem. Interestingly, Swedenborg did not create any circle or any order himself. It is not certain that he was a Freemason. It is said in the Occult Theocracy from Queensborough, for instance, that he was a high degree Templar, but I do not have any proofs for that. So Swedenborg did not create directly any kind of lodge. A certain Benedict Chastanier, who was a Freemason himself, created the London Theosophical Society in 1783. He was assisted by the Marquis Louis-René de Thomé, dedicated to the study. So the Theosophical Society was dedicated to the study and diffusion of Swedenborg's philosophy. It is sometimes said that Caglistro participated. In any case, this society was attended by a lot of European seekers from the nobility. The original rituals seem to have been lost. Later, they were replaced and recreated by a certain Samuel Beswick. He was of a Swedenborgian family, and it is believed that he is the one who brought the rites he wrote to the US, Canada, and then back to Europe. I can translate what is here on the screen. After the death of Swedenborg, a Swedenborgian society was created in London in 1788. So we have two different dates, 88 and 83. All throughout this presentation, in terms of the Illuminati history, dates are very uncertain. You find in different books, not just on the internet, all kinds of discrepancies. So according to a ritual translated and orchestrated by Freemason, okay, Swedenborgian Society in 1788 in London. And it was called, this new church was also called the Church of the New Jerusalem. It was slowly organized, first in England, then in the United States, and then elsewhere in the world. Today, it is admitted that there are about 25,000 Christians, said Swedenborgian, in the world, mainly in the United States. Another interesting group, although much smaller, the Illuminated of Avignon. Avignon is a small town, but an important one in the southwest of France. Why important? Well, because it was the home of the popes when there was conflict between Rome and France in terms of papacy. So anyway, a certain Antoine Joseph Pernetti, he was a Benedictine monk, and he quit the Benedictine order. But before that, as a Benedictine, he had access to all kinds of manuscripts, and he discovered Hermetism in the Benedictine Abbey of Saint-Germain-des-Prés in Paris. So he became an avid supporter of Swedenborg. And when he started to be because of his discovery of Hermetism and Swedenborg philosophy, he decided to create a circle also, the Illuminated of Berlin. And this didn't please his founder, Frederick II of Prussia. So Pernetti had to leave Prussia and he found refuge in France. He was invited by a marquis, the Marquis of Vaucroise, and landed in the proximity of Avignon at a residence, some kind of a mansion at this point, that was called the Chateau of Montabor, that you have here on the picture. This is where he gathered a crowd of ardent wannabe illuminated, not eliminated. Well, maybe that's what we have to do. Fun enough, the building in which this circle was gathering, we have now a winery, and I found quite interesting that on the labels for the wine, which happens to be Châteauneuf-du-Pape, not any pretty good wine, well, they are using the term illuminated. Okay, so according to their website, they know the history of the building that they are using. So now we are going to speak about a character that is much more difficult for me to connect with, Adam Weishaupt. Well, Weishaupt is a very different character, functions differently. Was he Jewish, as sometimes mentioned? Well, chances, according to his name, but we don't know for sure. He was orphaned at 5 years old and was then taken care of by his father-in-law, probably, who was in charge of the Jesuit college, a Jesuit college. So Weishaupt was immediately noticed for his intelligence. And so his tutor gave him access not only to the normal cursus, but also to all the censored writings of the French philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment. We do not know if Weishaupt converted, okay? Not very important at this point. What seems to be important to me is that his personality was based on science, reason. His objectives and motivations were, his motivations were reaching the objective. Okay, he, after all, was raised by the Jesuits, whether or not he was a Jesuit. We have to say about that, that first he was a doctor of law, but then he was trained in canon law and held a chair of canon law, a position that was normally limited to Jesuits. So probably he was one of them. So he is said to have been initiated in Freemasonry, that yes. Now the exact date, again, around 1777. But he was immediately disappointed, probably because he didn't like anything that was close to mysticism. He wanted to create a circle based more on intelligence and on the idea that they needed to stop the power of the monarchy and to stop the power of religion over the states. He favored science, rational thinking over blind faith, dogma, and emotions. And this is very interesting. He also didn't like the trend of alchemy and Rosicrucianism. So for him, meeting the Freemason was the way to circulate his ideas. although he didn't want to, it was not enough for him, he actually used the Freemasonry and all the contacts that he had access through them to diffuse his philosophy. Although the Jesuits were disbanded in 1773 by the Pope, he was trained as a Jesuit, and so he was accustomed to their principle of infiltrations. He sent his best followers in lodges, and he used the already existing Masonic web to quickly expand his influence. The order, the first order created by Weishaupt, was called the Order of the Perfectibilists, and then it was called the Bavarian Illuminati. This, the dates again are not sure. Now, in terms of his connection with the Rothschild, did he recruited Rothschild himself, who is supposed to have financed the order, or was he contacted by them? Nothing is certain, besides the fact that Weishaupt was connected to a certain Baron Adolf von Knigge, who might have been the connecting link. According to Quinsborough and Miller, when the Illuminati of Bavaria were suppressed in Germany, they reemerged in France under the aegis of Mirabeau, the Marquis de Mirabeau, and then with the Duc d'Orléans, who was the Grand Master of Freemasonry in France at this time. There is, of course, something important to mention, the eventual connection between the French Revolution and the Freemasonry. We have a text that I thought important to note, the Illuminati in America. It is a letter that was sent by a certain Snyder to George Washington, and the answer of Washington is interesting. Snyder is telling him about the Illuminati that penetrated the United States and contaminated the Freemason lodges. The answer is, it is not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and principle of Jacobinism had not spread in the United States. On the contrary, no one is more fully satisfied of this fact than I am satisfied. The idea I meant to convey was that I did not believe that the lodges of Freemason in this country had, as society, endeavored to propagate the diabolical tenets of the first. Another interesting quote, the Bavarian order was operative across Europe until 1784, when a messenger en route for Frankfurt to Paris was struck by lightning. On the dead body, it was discovered a piece of paper written by Weishaupt himself, titled The Original Shift in Days of Illumination. The content of this paper described the future goal for the New World Order through revolution, and notes for the French Revolution. The destiny of these writings was the Grand Orient of France. Another group that we cannot forget that has been called the Illuminated, the Martinists, created by Martinez de Pasquali in 1754. And this is the most important for me because it was mentioned to me occultly decades ago as one of the main conduit with Freemasonry to the invisible college of the Illuminati. And this is where we reach the core of the subject. What is most important is not to understand everything that happened historically the connections, the people. It is to grasp and be reminded that the leading group of the planet is not physical. It lives beyond the veil, and it plays with man and mankind like puppets from the astral world. So the part of the invisible and astral spiritual governing body that have consorted with the darkness and lost their way is the Illuminati. These were beings who were probably masters or at least initiates in the past. They were supposed to be luminaries for mankind. They were serving the higher beings in charge of the planet, but with the fall of mankind, with the fall, we are going to see it later, of the whole consciousness with the Kali Yuga, these beings became the servants of the darkness. They became addicted on the physical and on the astral. In the astral world, they became addicted to sex, to lust, to power. And they were using the third dimension. They were using all these people that we spoke about and created their own means of power and infiltration. So, astrally, they created their own egregores, fields, groups. Those groups practiced all the horrors that we know about, Satanism, Luciferianism, and so on. And they were leading, ruling the highest degree of Freemasonries, of the Martinists, the Templars, the Jesuits, etc. So these are the real Illuminati, the people who have the power over mankind from the other side. I will stop here.